Welcome to the Scaleup Valley Podcast, where we bring the best founders and investors to help you scale a business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest comes from Hamburg. His name is Peter, the founder and CEO at Cybus. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. And you have a great story. It's your second startup slash scale up. And but for the ones who didn't have the privilege to get to know you better as I did before, tell us a little bit more about your story and how you did it, how you ended founding Cybus.
Yeah, okay. That's one of the rare occasions where I can tell the full story. I'm very excited to do that. Yes, today I'm the CEO of Cybus, which is a software company serving industrial clients, enterprise industrial clients with a software which is very sophisticated for improving operational excellence and smart factories, very industrial. And my story actually would not suggest me ending in this industrial setting because as you said, before starting Cybus, I did something very different, namely I rented sailboats. I'm always a little bit struggling if I should call what I did before a startup at all. At least it was a venture, I would say.
Right.
I'm an engineer myself, electrical engineer by education, software engineer at heart, I would say. I'm one of those guys who taught himself programming basically when I was 11 or 12 or so. And I always did programming and I always did internet websites, databases, backend systems, Linux servers, got more and more sophisticated. And then there was this point in time that was around 2010, I would say. So 12 years ago, 13 years ago, when a friend of mine and we got a sailboat into our hands, a very nice wooden classic sailing dinghy. And we wanted to have this in Hamburg. We have a little lake in the center of Hamburg, the Alster, very beautiful little lake where you can sail on. And we wanted to put the boat there, but we were just students. And it was a question of money because such a berth is expensive. And so we thought, let's rent this boat with friends. But the other thing is we don't have time. So we should probably automate the renting process somehow, make it modern. And because I was an engineer and my friend was a smartphone app developer back then, we came up with the idea of adding a GPS tracker to the boat and we're building a booking platform and payments backend and an app, so you could walk along the lake and basically rent our boat. Yeah, amazing. That was the original idea. And one thing to emphasize here is that was 2010. Yeah. Today, I would just say, okay, we connected some sailboats to an IoT platform and built a sharing platform on top of it. But 2010, we didn't have Airbnb.
Right.
Sharing wasn't a word.
Exactly.
Having a smartphone was new, and IoT wasn't a word either. So it was
incredible.
It was a little bit premature, I would say. Right. But it was fun and it worked. We learned a lot about, especially trust. Because we had really this beautiful wooden sailboat we gave to strangers, and without any problems. And we scaled this a little bit and tried to build a business on top of it. And I think we made it to 70 or 80 boats in Germany, all from private people. So like Airbnb for sailboats. Yeah, but impressive on the one hand, but a little bit too idealistic. We didn't earn a single euro with it. Yeah, in the end, we didn't lose
an
money.
MBA.
Yeah, we didn't lose money, but we also didn't gain a lot because in the end, that was the first learning back then. We spent the first months of this venture which was called Botschaft. It's a German play of words for boat rental. And we spent the first months, I remember very well, after the squash games every week, we designed our communication protocol. We did the engineering. How can we save the battery on the boat and send the GPS positions, how to optimize the data flow towards battery usage and so on. And it was super technical. And we completely missed back then that we should invest in marketing and think about sales and so on.
Right.
So that was an important learning. The second thing that we learned was it's incredibly hard to growth hack something like that when you have a limited season. Now, sailing is in Germany possible from May to September, I would say. Everything else is more for the hardcore guys. And you have the sunny weekends between May and September where you can really try to growth hack this. So it didn't work out at all. But we made an observation back then, and it was more accidental. We built a system, and it was very specifically designed for our reservation system. For example, our boats would send their position once per 15 minutes, because that was enough. We didn't need more, because we only wanted to know, was the boat already brought back to the berth, or should we charge another 15 minutes on the PayPal account, right?
Got it.
And then some sailing clubs approached us and said, okay, you have a GPS tracking and we have sailboat races. Can't we use the same trackers for the sailboat races? And then we said, yes, of course. But our problem was then we would need more second interval, every second a position for the racing. Right. So we were in a situation where we suddenly saw we could, on the same technological basis, we could add another application, but we need some modularity. And then we had to throw away all our work about the proprietary protocols and so on. And we stumbled over a technology which is called MQTT. Don't have to explain that, but it's now a very popular communication protocol in the Internet of Things. And we stumbled over that in 2012. And in one afternoon, we replaced our complete system with MQTT, and suddenly it was like a light bulb going on. Yeah, so we saw, okay, what is the power of that? And in 2014, when everybody started to talk about IoT, we realized, okay, what we just built was an IoT for sailboats, Internet of Sailboats, because we had connected sailboats. Right. Okay, so let's take this technological experience we made and try to take the technology, but now into a market with an economic problem. And that was really the start of Cybus. That was the very naive spark of an idea that I really can boil down to transferring a very scalable technology from the classic internet into the industry. And this technological transfer is really what is still our everyday business today.
Got it. What an amazing and inspiring story. And now Cybus. So how does Cybus work? What is the stage of growth? Where are you in? And just to give some context to the audience. So you have been leading that business, the first one that you just explained, the sailboats, from 2011 to 2014, and you started Cybus in 2015, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we started in 2015 with a very simple thought. We thought, okay, IoT, what does it mean? IoT means we need to be able to communicate with things. That's a very simplified way of saying that. We can build business cases on top of that. Right. Our first approach into the market, we had this technology, and we had a very clear idea. We always let me think how I phrase that. What amazes me about the internet, the classic internet, and also smartphones, for example, that these technologies have reached a maturity and a simplicity that allows everybody to be a creator. Who is building all these smartphone apps? It's advertising agencies. So we have made technology so simple that it's not engineers, but advertising agencies bringing innovation into our hands. And this is, I would say, this creative power. That's what amazes me about the internet. And when we talked about Internet of Things or industrial Internet of Things, the immediate conclusion we drew was, okay, that means we can extend this idea to a world like the industry. And I envision that in a couple, and we are still not there, but in some hopefully near future, I think that every creative person can bring an app to a factory, innovate on data, bring the best energy management, bring the best AI, bring the most intuitive interface to interact with the robot, whatever you want.
Got it.
This whole creativity, bringing this to the industrial world, that is for me the big promise of smart factories. And but everybody, when I envision all these individual creative app developers, let me call them like this, they will all have a common problem. And this common problem is that a factory does not have an API. It's not that simple. The simple access to data and the simple interface is missing. And so our founding story was, let's give factories an API. Let's make data access so simple that building apps for a factory is as simple as building apps on a smartphone. So that's basically the foundation. And that is why we decided to build a software that in itself is more a facilitator for communication with industrial equipment than an application in itself. So we don't do dashboards, we don't do algorithms, we don't do HMIs. That is what we leave to our partners or to basically the rest of the technology stack. And this was really the founding idea, but the question is, how do you bring that into the market? And our initial assumption, the absolutely initial assumption was factories are already connected. That was what we thought, 2015. Because when you switch on your TV and you see a factory, you see all these robots welding and screwing, and they dance synchronous ballet and so on. But the truth is
not the reality.
We are far away from that. So one single thing. So the biggest problem of the factories is still that most processes are still full of paper, pen and paper, and manual work and so on. So we thought how we scale that. We thought we work with the machine vendors. Because as a startup, you try to find some leverage and some multiplier. And our initial assumption was when we partner tightly with machine vendors, we can scale with them into the market. And we did that for a couple of years. We even found investment for that. We developed our product for that. Essentially allowing, for example, a robot manufacturer to stay in contact with the robot, even when the robot is in a factory at the end customer, when it's sold.
Got it.
So they can build digital business models on top of that. But all we achieved on that path was many successful pilot projects, but no rollout. And that is symptomatic for the market. Despite everybody talking about digital business models in the manufacturing industry, we are far away from that. That's still 2023. This market is super traditional. And one problem I observe all the time when talking to these machine builders is exactly the problem that I described earlier. These are all engineers. And when they say, I want to build a digital business model, what is the next thing they do? Okay, we have to specify how our gateway should work. And this is, and then they start a pilot on that, and then they build hardware, and then they invest into a startup and so on. And then finally, after 2 years, they have their gateway and their cloud set up, but not tested a business model against a single customer, nor answered the question why anybody would pay for the service. So this is the wrong way around. And it's a little bit symptomatic. And that is the reason why we said, okay, we have to twist our, I would say, pivot is a bit too much of a word for that, but we have really shifted our focus. And since 3 years, I would say, so since 2020, we do not approach machine builders anymore, but we directly go to the factories. So we try to help factories get transparency about what happens in their production shop floor on the basis of real data. So that is basically what we are doing now. And there we have found a very interesting entry point that is a big differentiator to the rest of the market. Also, when you go into a factory, you have lots of pilots everywhere. 3D printer here and predictive maintenance use case there. There's a lot going on the innovation side. But when these innovation projects shall roll out, they all have a common enemy, and that is the IT department. The IT department is the one that says, okay, no, that's not secure. We don't open the firewall. Who shall operate that? Did you think about a maintenance or update concept and so on? So the IT is somehow the evil guy. And we said, okay, but all their concerns are quite valid. Because it's exactly what they say. When you build a pilot, you never deal with security because you want to make this 3D printer work or this AI algorithm. Security is in the way. It's an opportunity cost. And so we said, okay, let's take that as a market entry strategy and target the IT with our product and design a product that helps the IT not being a bottleneck for innovation, but an accelerator. So we have built a product that the CIO will love, that ticks all the boxes, and that can help basically really accelerate the innovation projects from prototype to rollout by a factor of, I don't know, it's impossible to calculate. We have projects that go live from the idea to rollout in 2 weeks. That would otherwise take months. So this is really, and this allows a speed of innovation in an industrial environment, which is actually very, very slow, and very, very, very conservative, I would say. It allows a speed of innovation that almost allows the factory to operate like a software company. They can deploy a process improvement from now to next week, and when it's not paying off, they can take it back. So when you get yourself into a position where changing something in your production process, it doesn't cost a lot, then you can experiment, and that's basically the core value proposition that we are selling now, and that works pretty well, at least for a certain part of the market.
Incredible the way you are able to explain such incredible difficult concepts for an audience that, of course, doesn't know deep about the area that you are talking. So great exercise explaining to babies what you guys are delivering for factories, and also a great exercise to understand that sometimes getting to product market fit is a long run, and we are seeing more and more companies who are able to persevere and be resilient before being ready to scale up. So you started it with the machine ventures, you needed to iterate into factories, you needed to understand who were the decision makers, to be able to understand what are their pain points, and to be able to bridge all of that and understand where is the business model that will make the company work, right? And again, that's a search movement that it can take 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 8 years. It is mainly the if you will give up or not, because you will find out something that works, but maybe you will not have enough time and enough interest or enough will to keep persevering and to keep trying a puzzle that makes the business model work. So amazing in inspiring story.
Yeah, it's also you're always questioning, right? Because in a space like we are, and with the expertise that we have built in our team, with today a team of 50 people. In different areas of the company, of course, but experts in all sorts of right. things, consulting, engineering, IT operations, and so on. Yeah, so we can help customers with a lot of things. That means we could there's a constant possible fallback. We could always pivot to consulting business, and that is a safety net on one hand, because if the business model, which is still a venture, it's still a growth business which needs venture capital to work. Yeah. If that wouldn't work out, we would have the safety net. That's good, but it's also tempting, and because it's much easier to sell, let's say, an 80,000 euro consulting project, right, than selling 800 euro software license. It's really crazy, and finding the right balance, because all the textbooks say startups shouldn't do projects, and also the investors don't want to hear you doing projects, right? Because they want you to scale. But on the other hand, without projects, you lose the proximity to the customers. You don't learn about the actual problems when you, especially in such a complex environment than we are. You have to get somehow into the customer and see it from inside and understand where to develop the product to even better solve the problems the customer has. So really finding this balance, how much project business should you do or not do, that's really something that I found incredibly hard over the last years. And we had really different times. We had times where we were profitable just because we did so much projects. But then again, product development goes into the background. Then it was the other way around, and it's always finding the right balance, keeping an eye on the market, doing projects, but still being a little bit ahead of the customer with the product development, and not losing the growth trajectory, because that's why the investors put their money in that. So that's what I have to balance all the time.
Yeah. And of course, I think that part of the story is also we have these buzzwords and everyone telling that, as you were saying in the beginning, that industry 4.0 is the present and the future. And then you have also today the Web3, the blockchain, also a bit the AI that might be incorporated in a horizontal way to all these technologies. But it is important to find a use case, an application, and a business model that works, and being able to manage the right timing to get into the market and understand what is your ideal customer profile, and how to make the business model work. It's a difficult work to do. And Industry 4.0, it's something that you have been leading the company for 80 years, and we've been listening for a very long time. And as you said, there is still so much to do. And sometimes the perception is that everything is automated in factories, that everything works in a robotic way, especially for the ones who are not in the field, who are not in the factories. Where did you land, or where did you find your ICP? Is it more in enterprise companies, SMB companies, any kind of factories? Where do you feel that your product is fitting better with that customer?
Yes. So let me try to start a little bit earlier. And I totally agree. We are in many parts of Industry 4.0 still at a point where customers search for a use case. But I think when you have a solution but no problem, that's research.
Exactly.
And that's
another common mistake.
And that's
yeah.
It's extremely dangerous, and it's part of our customer qualification in the sales process to identify if we have a customer with a problem and
Good
not
point.
A customer that would like to jump on the hype train. So that's one thing. Our technology is an infrastructure for data, for industrial data. And infrastructure with all parts of what infrastructure means. It's very efficient. It allows a lot of throughput. It can serve a big variety of use cases at the same time. Yeah, so like the highway can bring you to a big variety of targets, but it's also an investment to set it up. Yeah, like building a new highway, and you have to maintain and operate that. And that means such an infrastructure, like what we do and how we designed our product, it's not a lightweight gateway solution, it's an infrastructure solution, needs some commitment from the customer and doesn't pay off from the first use case. Like a bridge never pays off because you have one truck running over it. Yeah, it's a mass game. That means our ideal customer is a customer that already has a list of digitization, like a short list of digital projects, typically very different. Our typical entry points are, for example, traceability. That's my favorite. Customers more and more want or have to trace a product really through every production step. In the automotive industry, it's extreme. There are certain safety parts like the airbag, for example, or welding points on the car body, where the car manufacturer is obliged to measure the torque for every screw that is put in, or the electrical current of the welding. For every screw, really the torque, and they have to save this data for 15 years. So when your car would fall apart on the highway, it would be the manufacturer that has to prove that it was okay when it was manufactured. Yeah, this is one use case. It's called traceability. So you have to trace the product through the production with every step. You can extend that to carbon tracing. Yeah, that's also something that's coming up more and more, that customers want or have to calculate an exact carbon footprint of all the products they produce. Then they have intralogistics, moving things from A to B within the factory. It's getting more and more automated. You have AGVs driving around, but they need commands. Then you have quality management, you have energy management. There's so many different use cases that in the end need data off the shop floor. And the customer that is on the digital journey far enough developed that they say we have multiple use cases that have a common infrastructure requirement, then they are usually ready for talking to us. Typically, they have made the first 10 to 15 pilot projects for different parts of the production, and now they want to scale. And right now we have this comes with challenges. This comes with multiple challenges. One challenge is that everything that is that's not how industrial customers usually purchase. Industrial customers usually purchase software and hardware for a specific production line. So they have a specific production process and they want to automate it. Then they have a tender and they get a general contractor, and then this specific problem with a specific budget is solved. Yeah?
Got it.
And this is very fitting for a pilot project. That's also a reason from a budget perspective why pilot projects work. But for everything towards smart factories, you have to see the full picture. You have to set up an infrastructure and create the right technological enablers, like a cloud, like a data analytics team, like a software like Cybus Connectware, for example. But this is an investment which is really holistic. And many companies don't even have a budget for that yet, or a responsible person, just from an organizational point of view. And that is, from my experience now of the last years, that is the biggest impediment of digitization in the industry. Is not the lack of use cases, and it's not the lack of technology nor budget. It's the fact that the organizational setup is not prepared for the transformation that's required in order to think digital.
Right.
And now coming back to your questions, we see that there is a change, and the companies change, the organizations transform. Yeah, you have there's this Conway's law that says an organizational structure follows the structure of the technological stack, or the other way around. So you need an organizational transformation before you can do a technical transformation. And this happens at the enterprise customers currently, very strong. So we see most multinational companies in the manufacturing sector, which have 10, 20, 30, 50 production sites worldwide, or sometimes many more. They usually have set up central, globally responsible teams for managing the transformation of each site and getting the right ratio of standardization and transformation of IT infrastructure. And that is our ideal customer. So we search for these global responsible teams, often called something like product owner smart factory, or product owner transformation, or transformation office, something like that. And there you really see that's the tip of the iceberg. It's the largest companies, probably the ones that have the most advisory from the McKinseys and the PwCs and the Deloittes and so on, who advise them to do this. And they are actually executing this transformation, and that's just starting. And if you ask me, I would compare that movement we see now. It was, 8 years is long, but for a technological revolution, it's okay. Retrospectively, we have now did a lot of technology scouting and innovation scouting. And now we see a transformation starting. And I would say it's comparable to the introduction of ERP systems into the market, which happened in the 80s and 90s. And it also started with the large companies, enterprise resource planning, it's how it's called. And meanwhile, even the smallest company would have some kind of an ERP system. And I envision, I'm pretty convinced that we will see a similar movement in the smart factory or industry 4.0 sector, that we have now the first movers with the very large companies. And then when the technology gets a little bit more accepted and proven, and the competitive landscape and the landscape of products is more settled than it is today, everything is in strong movement and dynamics, then also the smaller companies will be able to buy. Right now, they cannot, because they would need to create large teams to even understand the different products and how they play together, and where are the overlaps and where are the interfaces. And this is something that the large enterprises can afford, and I would say the SMEs, they will follow in a few years. That's my assessment on the market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's much more a movement of moving downstream instead of the typical SaaS company of moving upstream, starting with smaller companies where you are able to easily get in, and then increasing the size of your clients, the size of the tickets you sell. Here it's the opposite. So you need to really be able to serve customers who are able to invest in innovation and then start automating, digitizing, making it super easy to buy and to install, and making it much cheaper to be able to start going downstream.
Yeah, that's at least the strategy we try to pursue. It's right now working very well. We have our big reference customers, Porsche. It's also it's public.
Amazing.
Where the new Macan is already manufactured on top of our software. Wow. And this is quite exciting. They did a big leap of faith and really built a completely cloud-enabled manufacturing line. And we, as Cybus, serve all the data between the shop floor and the cloud. And it's really interesting to see how that works and how they also do the organizational setup, really creating a dedicated team which acts as a shared service, providing connectivity to the use cases, multiple use cases, and now extending that across the full production of Porsche. And this is a pattern we think is very successful. And we see many other potential customers and potential customers, especially in this size, are jumping on the similar train right now. Yeah.
Amazing. So let's just taste quickly kind of some of the fundraising lessons, and then coming also of the evolution of your founding team into your leadership team, also your split of responsibilities and how you went from CTO at the beginning to the CEO. But I think that it relates better now, kind of connecting here with the fundraising. So when you are in a search mode and trying to find product market fit, it's not easy to go every 12 to 18 months raise a new round. So you are still in search mode, and it becomes a little bit difficult. Should I raise, or should I kind of try to almost bootstrap and extend the runway and be able to show more data points that we are on the right track than to be able to raise the next round? Can you just give us an overview in terms of the funding rounds when they happened, and for other industry 4.0 players in the technology sector, how difficult it is to navigate fundraising? I assume it's not an easy job at all for any entrepreneur, but especially in this area from what I'm listening from you.
Yeah, that's right. The challenge is, or was, and we were successful or lucky, however you want to put it. You really have to find investors that understand the market dynamics. We have talked to investors in the past that pretty bluntly have said, we don't invest into industrial tech because we don't understand how we can calculate the chances. It's just too dynamic, and I get it. Just right now, what's happening? We are a Microsoft partner, and for example, and what's happening there is they're changing. I can't go into details, but they're changing fundamentally how they approach the manufacturing industry. Even a company like Microsoft, because although they have an extremely large market share, the actual rollout to the factories is hard, even for such a large company. It's not a question of funds or company size. It's really the market itself that I'm not even sure that it yet exists. And who is competitor and who is partner? What is the role? Companies like Siemens, for example, that are extremely profitable, struggle to find their position in the architectural stack of the future. And they tried with MindSphere, a cloud offering, and they tried with their automation business and their PLCs and controllers. They try to get into the market. And even for these companies, it's extremely hard. So how hard must it be for a company like a startup or a scale-up that doesn't even have the background? And so that means you need an investor that really shares the vision. And we have found those investors in the past. First, family offices from the industry. Andreas Pannenberg, it's a small family-owned industrial company from Hamburg, and the owner, Mr. Pannenberg, from the company Pannenberg, he believed in us very early, and he said, "These guys, they have something. I put some money in, and then awesome. So really like an angel, right?" And then we got the next bigger round from Schunk, which is the vice president of the VDMA, Henrik Schunk. It's a German machine builders association, I would say. And step by step, we created some, I would say, due to the people that were backing us, we really generated some publicity or some people noticed us. And then it was Robert Gallenberger, who's one of the partners in the MetaWave Ventures. It's a German deep tech venture fund, who very much shares the vision that I told you earlier. So that that the future value will be not by one power application, but more like horizontally
platform.
Many platform like businesses, even down to the shop floor. And back then, when they invested, we really had to we really were struggling. Most investors call our software a middleware. Middleware is something in between. It's something. It's like an adapter, like when you travel, like an adapter for your thing. That's it's a commodity. It's not something where the value is generated. So many VCs told us middleware doesn't earn money, but it was Robert Gallenberger who back then correctly said, but if you are the gatekeeper for the data, and when Cybus is the one that's able to provide data from all the factories that are equipped with our software, then we can be the foundation for even more business, so we can act as a platform in the future. And that's also the direction that our business model will take in a couple of years. So we needed to find this investor with trust and vision, which matches our vision. And at latest last year, when PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, led our Series A round, we really cracked through the ice, I would say. And when a company like this, who is an auditor and also has an advisory business, puts their bets on us, that is a lot of credibility. And starting from there, right now you're always in fundraising, right? And I'm right now too.
Preparing the B round.
I'm preparing the or let's say A+. Let's see if it's a B round. Of course, you have always to navigate a little bit with how easy is it currently to get money. Fundraising market is also getting tough right now. People are getting a little bit more careful. But we can show a pretty impressive pipeline right now. And with Porsche and so on as a reference customers, that really is extremely promising. So suddenly it turned around. Suddenly investors approach us, and suddenly I find myself in investor conversations, and I don't even have a pitch deck ready or anything else. Suddenly I'm under pressure because the investors, they also follow, right? So and they see, okay, there's a company that survived long enough. They scale. They seem to be able to serve customers. We have the permission to control production at Porsche, which is quite significant. And so the fundraising story really has shifted. It's an interesting learning for myself, being an engineer again. 4 years ago, I had to explain my technical vision to investors and get them on board. Now, nobody asks for technology. It's financials. Now it's scaling model, growth model, sales strategy, sales execution, pipeline. So what everybody tells, that the type of investor talks really change perspective from what is your product to how does your sales work. That really is currently happening.
Exactly. Now it's all about the metrics, and the good news is that given your enterprise motion, your average revenue per account has a potential to grow a lot, and you are able to roll out within your existing customers. So which means that you can grow a lot your business without even adding any new customers. So if you are able to do both, it can be explosive growth.
Yeah, and of course, we are in a pretty central part of the stack. So we really built the backbone of the smart factory. So that's also quite a high lifetime value when you calculate in investors metrics.
Right. Good point as well. So let's go quickly to also your evolution as a founder. So you started your first company. You have shared already on the show a couple of lessons learned there. Then it evolved to Cybus. You start the company as CTO from 2015 to 20, of course, as co-founder and CTO, or founder and CTO, and then you join, or you shift to the CEO seat in 2020, which was similar to the time when you were explaining the story of Cybus, when you decided to shift from machine vendors to factories, right? So I recognize here a pattern. So how has been this journey for you with a technical background, moving more into a business background and needing to lead the company or the VC backed business yourself?
So we started the company with me and two friends of mine. And the founding team was exactly the same team that ran the boat rental business. It was exactly the same founding team. And yeah, today one of the three founders has left the company. Now is doing something else. Have started something different. Things change. 8 years is a lot of time.
Of course.
Sometimes you change your path, and my third co-founder, who is still in the company, I always have to explain it, and I'm a little bit surprised why. We started the company with 3 people, and then, okay, you look three young guys, in their mid-20s, look each other in the eyes and say, okay, now we started the company, we are 3 founders. Okay, so now we are 3 managing directors. And then there comes a time where the first time you have to fill in a form and say, okay, he's CEO, he's CTO, he is whatever, CPO also. Right. So it's somehow, there's this first time where you question who has which role. And for me, it was very clear CTO, because I'm a software architect. That's it's really my passion. Pierre was the CEO. Pierre was the CEO, the numbers guy, and then Marius, he's our MacGyver. He can solve any problem. He can. It's really like that. But it's not naturally given that only because you are 3 friends founding a company, it should be those 3 guys in the managing role, or they want it even. And Marius, for example, the MacGyver, he pretty clearly said, I don't want to be a people leader. I don't want to be C-level. I don't want to have strategic responsibility. I want to solve problems at the customer. So he's at the front row. And so he voluntarily stepped down from the managing position, even from team lead, and is now the guy that you want when something doesn't work, because he's the best.
Amazing.
and that is an interesting pairing. Yeah, he was my best man. I was his best man at the weddings, and so we are very close, but operate at very different ends of the company. And I think I think I was not a good CTO. I think I have made many good architectural decisions, and I have a very good gut feeling for software and architectures and technologies. We have made a couple of very good decisions, but for being a very good CTO, you have to build a great engineering team and lead that and make that very efficient. And I didn't have that experience. Yeah, just because I'm a talented software architect, I don't automatically have the experience to build a great engineering team. And that is something where I'm very glad I have just onboarded a new CTO last year, 6 months ago or so, Jasmine. And he's that guy. He's that engineering leader with everything it needs to build and lead such a great engineering team. And I'm looking at him and say, okay, that is what I was missing. So I'm very happy to have left this role. And this people told me I have a talent talking and leading conversations and so on. And from that, somehow I got into more and more conversations with the investors, with the customers, and so on, and found interest in this the CEO role, and it felt quite natural. And it's now 2 years. The first thing I did when I took over the role was I hired a coach and asked, what is a CEO doing? Yeah, I'm sitting in front of a white sheet of paper and suddenly nobody's telling me what my tasks are. And we worked it out pretty well. And his answer was straight to the point. A single thing, he said, you have to build trust with everybody, customers, team, investors, and everything that's required to do that is your job. So, and from there, I developed today, and I think I'm pretty satisfied, pretty clear now what I have to do, pretty clear what I can delegate. I've set up a strong middle management layer where I can give the operational responsibility. Like Lara, you have met her.
Yeah,
she's heading our marketing team and so on. So I'm giving a lot of trust in people, yeah, that's how Cybus works today.
Amazing. So amazing story, amazing evolution, and love the fact of a lot of things that you shared here, but the self-awareness of being able to understand that we are much more an expert than a leader, and moving into a position of strength and not having any issues, that you still are a founder and you can be playing another position. It don't need to be an executive position, and also on your side to have the humility to ask for help for your new role, and then to feel comfortable now in your new role, and making the difference for the company and leading it very well. So awesome. Let's go into the final segment of the show, and time is flying. It's incredible when we are having great conversations. So I ask you a quick question, you give me a brief answer. So let's go for the first one. If you would have the opportunity to have a coffee with yourself in 2015 at the beginning of Cybus, what advice would you offer to your younger self?
I would advise my younger self to get help earlier, to ask for advice and ask questions. My younger self tried to do everything on his own. Meanwhile, I'm much more humble on that.
Awesome. And what are you the most proud of on your journey so far?
Most proud I am about the fact that I'm usually brutally honest to myself and to everybody else. And I don't oversell. And I'm very transparent with everything, also with the numbers for the team, and with everything I don't know. And we've come this far on a path of honesty, and that's something that makes me very proud because it feels really good.
Trust. Worst advice ever received?
introduce OKRs.
Okay, I would love to follow up on that, but I don't have the opportunity on this segment, so I will shut up and move forward. So resources, your favorite book, it can be business or non-business. It's much more to get to know you.
I would name two. The best business book is Task Forward from Matthias Hilpert. It's the best sales book you can imagine. It's really great. And the best non-business book is Taking on the World from Alan MacArthur. It's a biography of a British young sailor who sailed alone around the world. And her motto was, go for it. And I like that.
Amazing. Favorite movie or series, as you wish?
It's The Pursuit of Happiness, because that's a movie about persistence and success in the end.
Amazing. And finally, your favorite podcast, excluding this one?
I cannot name a favorite podcast. I don't listen to many, but I have a YouTube series, and that is a woodworking series about rebuilding Tally Ho. It's a 110-year wooden sailboat, and this is really good for thinking about something else.
It helps. I'm listening more and more this from founders, that sometimes we need to disconnect and listen about another thing. Also, to avoid burnouts and being always on, it is really important to occupy our minds to other things outside of business. Peter, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. I wish you all the best for the future, and you are always invited to come back to share the next chapters.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.
Likewise, and to our community, thanks for being there. We keep bringing you the best of the best to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. See you soon, and keep scaling.